We are all back here from Brussels. I hope the colleagues from Antwerp are also connected. Thanks again to all the stakeholders, to the followers that we have online. I'm really happy to start now the policy dialogue. I will first introduce the policy dialogue. It's divided in 3 parts. We have the first part where we have the speech, the keynote speech of Ms. Rosalinde van der Vlies. Then I leave the floor to the speakers of the 4 projects. They will present the joint policy brief. After that, we have the panel discussion. So I'm really now, it's a pleasure for me to introduce Ms. Rosalinde van der Vlies. Let me introduce her. Rosalinde van der Vlies is the director of the Clean Planet Director of the European Commission, DG Research and Innovation. She is also Deputy Mission Manager of Climate Neutral and Smart Cities Missions. Before her appointment as director, Ms. van der Vlies was the head of unit of coordinating an interinstitutional relationship unit, acting as communication and citizen unit. Previously, she holds the position at DG Environment, DG Justice, Home Affairs, and was also in the private office of Janez Potočnik, so the European Commissioner for Environment. She is a competition lawyer, and she has recently attended a conference on citizen engagement, and so in the EU mission. So, Ms. Rosalinde van der Vlies, it's a very pleasure to have you here for your keynote speak, and I'm sure it will be provide a lot of relevant contribution to the discussion of today. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everybody. It's such a real pleasure to be here talking to real people, and you're actually moving as well, so that's just wonderful. After almost 2 years of staring at a screen, it's really great to come out, of this COVID crisis and to see real people. Of course, at the same time, we are unfortunately suffering worldwide with another big crisis. Who would have thought that we would have been in such a situation? And I just want to say that, of course, all our hearts are with the very brave Ukrainian people. And I have to say that, apart from this really dark period that we are living in, I'm really very much heartened by the European solidarity that I've seen, not only, between the European governments, but also European citizens. And there's so many initiatives ongoing in the whole European Union, expressing the solidarity with the Ukrainian people. And I think this is really at the heart, of the European project, and really also demonstrating, why we should be so proud of being inside and part of the European Union. So this by way of introduction. I also have to say that it's such a pleasure to be here in the Slovenian permanent representation. I've been working with, I have to say, the best Slovenian commissioner ever, Janez Potočnik, even though, of course, all Slovenian commissioners are amazing. But it is also really great to be here in the Slovenian permanent representation, which brings back a lot of good memories for me at the time when I was working with Janez Potočnik. Anyway, so I'm here to give you a bit of an overview, taking the 4 projects that I think have been really amazing, and I will say a few words about them later, but to really take you a bit big in the bigger policy context in which we are operating. And of course, I have to start with our European Green Deal. And let me start by asking whether anybody has not heard about the European Green Deal. Please raise your hand. Excellent, you can all stay. I'm very relieved. Because, of course, the European Green Deal, it is really still, we have described it in many different ways, but it is really, our motor, our compass for the future, and also our instrument to get out of the COVID crisis. And the good thing about the European Green Deal is that it's basically combining sustainability with economy, with society. And when I was working with Janez Potočnik, he was Commissioner for Environment, and he often told me that, whenever he entered into a room with businesses, he felt a bit like a green monster. Because at that time, this is many, many years ago, there was still, this feeling that, environmental protection is kind of like a luxury, and it's bad for businesses and bad for the competitiveness of the European Union. Now, thank God that times have changed. Because now it has really become mainstream thinking that protecting our environment goes hand in hand with strengthening the competitiveness of our industries, and also goes hand in hand with the societal dimension and our inclusive policy of leaving nobody behind. So I think this is really, we are on a very strong path, and I'm really proud that with the European Union, we have set ourselves, all of us, this ambition to become the first climate neutral continent in the world by 2050. And of course, we have, adapted our legislative framework that we have in the EU, which we call in our bubble the Fit for 55 packages, which is difficult to explain when I go back home to my grandmother, who was thinking we were doing like fitness programs in Brussels. But okay, I think you all know what I'm talking about here. But I mean, it's very important that, we are, underlining our, political ambition, climate neutrality by 2050, with also the rules, the legislative rules of the game. But also, of course, we need to make sure that we are having, huge investments to support this green transition in the European Union. And at EU level, I'm sure you're all very familiar, we have, many investment programs. And I'm very proud to say that when it comes to research and innovation with Horizon Europe, we have managed to become the biggest European framework program for research and innovation ever. And I can tell you this is not a given, because of course, the sources, the funding that we have available at the EU level are limited. There are many different and very important programs at EU level. So when we were, discussing the budget division in the context of the MFF, the Multi-Annual Financial Framework, then it was very clear that it was not a given we would get so much money for research and innovation. But I think, thanks to the great work that we have been doing through previous framework programs, including Horizon 2020, we have been able to demonstrate the importance of research and innovation. And not only to support the technological developments, but also the societal developments and the social innovation dimension. So the 4 projects, I mean, they are, they were supported by Horizon 2020. So it already shows that, the societal dimension was already embedded in the framework programs that we had at European level. But I would argue that with Horizon Europe, we basically turn the page and we start a new chapter. And I remember discussions that we were having with the member states on Horizon Europe, and there were some member states that said, we need a small dedicated part of this program dedicated to SSH issues. And we tried to argue from the Commission, we said, this is so important. We cannot just have, like a ring-fenced part of Horizon Europe focusing only on SSH. We need to mainstream across the whole program, the societal dimension. And this is, in the end, the approach that we have been taken. And I really hope, we will have also an interim evaluation of the program. I think we should really look at, this issue in particular also in the interim evaluation, has this worked or not? But the idea really was behind this change, that we don't have this dedicated ring fence part, but we mainstream, that we really, step up our investments in social innovation and in the societal dimension of the different transitions. So another very new part of Horizon Europe that is very much linked to the fact that we are much more citizens-oriented are, of course, the missions. And today I'm extremely excited because in 1.5 hours, at 12 o'clock sharp, we will be announcing the 100, I call them the happy 100, the 100 cities that will have been selected to participate in the cities mission. So 1.5 hours to go still. So this is a very important milestone for us. I really invite you to have a look because I think, our colleagues have done a great job. We had received almost 400 applications. So we were really, overwhelmed and really happy, with this huge interest of the cities to participate in the cities mission. We had to make really tough choices because we will start with 100 that will be selected. But at the same time, I also want to say that this 100 is not the end game because as part of the cities mission, we will be extremely inclusive, and we will also be working with all interested cities in the European Union to help them on their pathway to climate neutrality. And one of the very important things that we will also be setting up under the cities mission will be national networks, because we really believe there is so much much enthusiasm around there, at the local and at city level, that we really need to capitalize on all this enthusiasm and make sure that we can work with all interested cities in this pathway. But I want to say a few more words about the cities mission, because I think it also links very nicely, with the 4 projects, because the cities mission is quite unique. It's not unique that the European Union is trying to support cities. We have many great programs in different areas that are supporting cities. But the uniqueness of the cities mission is that, like for Horizon Europe, we want to basically break across silos. So we want to have like a cross-sectoral approach, a holistic approach, and we will be supporting the cities by developing what we call a climate city contract that should be co-created together with the citizens and the stakeholders that live in these local communities. And this climate city contract should really be like the plan for the city, tailored to the local conditions on what is needed to become climate neutral already by 2030. So it's like a huge ambition, and we were quite nervous when we launched the call for expression for interest, because we were like, wow, maybe there are no cities, that basically would embark on such an ambitious pathway. So thank God that we had actually much more interested cities than we asked for. But it's a huge and an ambitious endeavor. And related to that, of course, it will be extremely important that there will be a tailor-made also investment plan for the cities in order to support, the climate city contract and, the plan in order to get to climate neutrality. And again, there, I think it will be extremely important to mobilize also the local communities. Because of course we will also through Horizon Europe be supporting the cities mission. But I mean, frankly speaking, I think, the money from the EU level, it will be just a drop in the ocean if you really look at the, financial needs that are needed in order to get to climate neutrality. So we need to mobilize all possible levels, including also, the local communities and the citizens themselves, in order to, mobilize all the resources that are available. So as a next step for us, in order to continue, we will be continuing, of course, with the social innovation dimension of well, in particular, the cluster 5, which is the cluster that is under the direct responsibility of my directorate, focusing on the climate sciences and transition in energy and mobility. So our work programs will continue to have a very strong focus on social innovation aspects. We are at this moment developing the work program for 2023-2024. And again, we will be making sure that there will be many, many topics inside the work program that will be focusing on supporting the social innovation aspect. But I think at the same time, it will be extremely important, and that's why I'm also extremely happy, like my colleague from CINEA. I mean, congratulations for putting common messages together. I think, and I would actually argue that for the future, in order to support the transition and also the cities participating in the cities mission, it would be great if we can even pull together, more knowledge from already past Horizon 2020 projects and also ongoing Horizon Europe projects together, so that there could be kind of like a one-stop shop for cities participating in the cities mission, to really learn from the very, very important findings from all these projects that have already been finalized. But there to say, I mean, more to come in the work program 2023-2024 of Cluster 5. Two other very important developments that I would like to mention before concluding. There is one very important development I'm sure you've all noticed, published on International Women's Day, and that was the REPowerEU communication, which is basically a joint action plan to get the European Union to sustainable, affordable and secure energy, to really reduce our dependencies on Russia. And the Commission services are currently preparing an action plan to make the REPowerEU more concrete. And I'm convinced that also in this action plan, the role of the citizens will be extremely important and highlighted there. The second development that I would like to mention that is ongoing is the revamp of the SET plan. This is the plan currently focusing on the strategic energy technologies. We had a very, to continue with the Slovenian connection, a very good conference last year in in Bled on the set plan, where we basically kicked off this revamping, and the common theme of this conference in Bled was human-centric approach. So I think that gives you a very clear indication of where we want to go with the set plan and what's in a name. But one of the things that I think we should be reflecting on, whether we should call the set plan the Strategic Energy Technology Plan, or whether we shouldn't change the T. A very wise man whispered in my ear that maybe we should change the T into transition to make sure that we can indeed make the set plan human-centric, as was discussed in Bled last year. So I would like to stop here. I just would like to say again, I'm extremely happy to be here. It's really inspiring to hear about these concrete results. And a big congratulations again to the project, in particular for developing common messages. I'm a firm believer if we are going to connect the dots, join forces, build together on common knowledge base, this is the only way we can have a successful transition. Thank you very much.
Back. Thanks a lot, Ms. van der Vries, for this great keynote. And then the message is really like that when we are together, we can really provide our contribution to the sustainable development. That's why we are a 4 project here. We really appreciate your appreciation for this policy brief, because we were working intensively all together to spread our message for the sustainable development, our message to mitigate global warming, as you said, our message to ensure energy dependencies, because we see in the news how much need is to provide energy dependencies nowadays, since ever, but now is really the time. So now I'm really happy to welcome on the stage the coordinator newcomers, Julia Blasch. Julia, you will coordinate the presentation on the policy brief. So Julia, please, the stage is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sylvia. Yeah, we're very proud to now present to all of you our joint policy brief. And I will do this together with the colleagues from the different projects. Please take a seat in the front. And we will have also one speaker joining us later from Berlin. So we're really connected from all parts. So now we're also waiting for some slides. Ah, here they are, perfect. Yeah, as I mentioned, now it's the time to present to you our shared findings in our joint policy brief. So my name is Julia Blasch. I'm the coordinator of the Newcomers Project. And as I said, I will present this together with the colleagues from different projects. So Dr. Alessandro Schullo from Comets, Dr. Mark Andor from Newcomers as well, Winston Gilcrease from Comets, and Professor Regina Betz from Sonnet. And we also have Jan Fjornes joining us later from Berlin, and he's from the Social Res Project. Yeah, you see, we have printed copies of the policy brief here, but for all those joining us online, please download the policy brief now if you want. You can do that under this link, bit.ly/joint policy brief. You can do it now, you can do it later, and now listen to our short presentation where we summarize the key insights. So why a joint policy brief? Well, as Manuela Conconi has already mentioned this morning, we all reacted to the same call that the European Union was opening under the Horizon 2020 scheme, the call on social innovation in the energy sector. And we were lucky to be selected as these 4 projects to work on this topic. It is thanks to the European Commission that we could work on this topic, and it's also thanks to the European Commission and in particular CINEA that we also worked together, because it's also, there are many projects out there working on the same topics. It's not always easy to meet, but we had these cluster meetings every once in a while, which gave us the opportunity to meet and to come up with this idea to have a joint policy brief. So all of these 4 projects worked on one or multiple forms of social innovation in the past 3 years. We analyzed thereby many different forms of social innovation, reaching from, for example, crowdfunding initiatives to energy cooperatives, or also, innovative municipalities like Antwerp, as we've already seen today. We also created an inventory of citizen-led energy initiatives. In particular, the colleagues from Comets worked on this. And we ran several citizen surveys among European citizens to understand their perception of social innovation and energy, and also their willingness to get engaged. So now we thought it's really the time to kind of synthesize what we have learned, all these 4 projects in these past 3 years, because we gathered so much knowledge. We thought it's really worth making the extra effort to kind of, putting it all together in one document. So we want to share these insights with the policymakers at all governance levels. So, of course, at the EU level, but also at the national levels and the municipal level. And what do we address in this policy brief? First of all, how is social innovation in energy defined, and what phenomena does it include? Alessandro Sciullo will speak about that. Then whether European citizens are aware of social innovation in energy and also supportive. Mark Andor will speak about this part. Then which values social innovation in energy potentially and actually gives to European citizens. And this is the part that Winston Gilchrist will speak about. We will also give you some insights into effectiveness and impact of social innovation in energy can be measured. It will be presented by Regina Betz. And we will close with how policies and regulation can effectively support social innovation in the energy sector. And that speech will then be given by Jan Fjornes remotely from Berlin. And with this, I would like to hand over to the first speaker, Alessandro Sciullo.
Hi, thanks, Julia. Waiting for the slides. Okay, I need to look this screen because I forgot my glasses at the hotel, but I think it's not a big problem. Okay, so yes, the first effort we made, each of us for our own perspective, was to try, to define, I don't know if defining is the correct word, to explore what could be social innovation, how social innovation can be intended as a core element, a core component of the energy transition. And all of us, the Fab Four, we are a sort of the Beatles of the Horizon program, the Four Sisters. Our common, let's say, starting point was to think at the social, many times have been already said this morning, to think in the social, in the societal dimension of the energy transition, not just as a complementary element or an afterthought of the technology's innovation, but as a core element of a complex transition. The energy transition, as all the other transition, in the second line, an S is missing because its transitions should be transitions are. Because energy transition is just one of the many transitions that human beings experience in the past 10,000 years. And any transition is actually a transition, is a radical change in the role of the social actors, in how they actually are able to perform, to adopt, and to satisfy through technology the human needs. And so here is a definition taken from one of the many interesting deliverables of the Sonnet project, and is to see and to consider the social innovation in the energy transition, let's call it CIE, as a combination of ideas, of activities, of objects that change the social relation. And I'm really struggling a bit with my lack of glasses, but no, because I want to be really sure to say, oh, thanks. If you can enlarge a bit more, no, it's fine. Social innovation involving new ways of doing, thinking, and no, thanks, thanks at all. New ways of doing, thinking, and organizing energy. Oh, I would like really to read the right, because this short statement contains a lot of sources of heterogeneity. We have ideas, objects, and activities. We have social relations. And we have doing, organizing, and thinking. So if we consider jointly all these sources of heterogeneity, the result, of course, is that social innovation cannot be considered cannot be defined once for all, cannot be defined as a dynamic that can be implemented in only one way, but the richness and the challenge and the opportunity for the social innovation in the energy transition, in all the transition that we experience and we have to foster in the next future, is the heterogeneity, is what we need to consider. Here you see, again, from the Sonnet project, this nice exercise to find a way to systematize a bit, to control a bit this heterogeneity. And here you find in this figure, this exercise is a kind of a matrix. We have our three functions that we need to address somehow, that is doing, thinking, and organizing. And in the rows and in the columns, you have the dynamics that can shape the social innovation initiative experiences. That is the cooperation, that is the exchange, the competition, and the conflict. So the joint result of the functions with these social dynamics originates, at least in the Sonnet perspective, that is a good or great exercise, and a great effort in trying to systematize this heterogeneity. The result of this joint consideration are these 18 different kind of possible social innovations. What is common, or from our perspective at least, is, and it's really interesting because it's connected to what Rosalind was mentioning about the citizen, but what we discussed from the very beginning, is that whatever the social innovation we focus on, the citizens are at the core, or should be at the core of these changes. Because as in any other innovation diffusion process, the citizens, the public, the society at large should be considered as the most relevant recipient of the innovation and the most relevant actor of the transition. So citizens need to be at the core. But what is really interesting is that the more the citizen move to the core of this process, the more this heterogeneity can increase. So again, heterogeneity is a challenge, but is an opportunity. Among all these 18, we focus in comets, but not only in comets, also in the other project. The most relevant and also the most recently reinforced by the European Commission are the energy communities, are the collective action, what we called in comets at least, collective action initiatives. So among all the different forms of social innovation, actually collective action, that is moving from acting as individual to acting as not even group, but communities, collective. So being able to actually share resources, share objective, and promote in some way this environmental and social justice as a form of mutual support. And this is the core concept for collective action. And the core result is in the energy, when we apply to the energy field, is to move the energy as one of the main element to satisfy our human needs, to move energy from being a private good monopolized in the last century by the market forces to be a kind of a common good. So it's a process of commoning the energy as a good in itself. Among the many collective action, when we think in collective action, we can refer to a cooperative, purchasing group, association, eco-villages, any kind of community-based initiative. Among the many different forms of collective action, energy communities in the past, well, I would say in the past, we should say in the past 100 years, but at least in the past 25, have gaining relevance, have gaining relevance, but was not considering that my glasses was at the author. But anyway, I will close in a second. And energy communities gain relevance as the main form of collective action. That in the very many forms are based on this voluntary participation in the combination of the commercial aims with the environmental and social community objectives. Now the collective action, the energy communities if we look within the energy communities functioning, we have this richness of shifting from the individual to the collective level in terms of sharing of resources, sharing action, and sharing decision-making processes. But if we look beyond the energy communities, we realize and we discover that energy communities and collective action could be also an engine to trigger a systemic change, because energy communities or collective action in itself can do a lot, but they need to interact with the other actors of the energy system. And one of example come, and it's really interesting what they investigated from the Social West project. One of these systemic perspective is to explore, and this is just an example, how the energy communities can actually play and interact with other collective actors of the energy system, like aggregators and crowdfunding platforms. So, in short, we can do a lot. In short, I'm moving to my seat. In short, we can do a lot as individual. We can do more as collective. We can do even more if, as collective, we interact with the others.
Yeah, good morning from my side. I'm Mark, very happy to be here and to hold this policy brief in the hands, and I present section 2, that's called Citizens' Perceptions and Support of Social Innovation in Energy. And very interesting, Manuela, I think this section gives some answers, at least, to the questions you highlighted this morning in the presentation too. Yeah, there are the slides. Yeah, here we are. And what I present now is mostly based on large international citizen surveys. So most of the findings are from this methodology, and it's these citizen surveys were conducted in the different projects and across very different and several European countries. The first slide pretty much supports what Rosalinde was saying, that the green movement is mainstream today. So we find a strong support among the general European population for a transition to clean and sustainable energy production. The environmental issues, and in particular climate change, is seen as a serious problem across the whole society. There's a general wide acceptance of measures to promote the transition towards clean renewable energy sources. And in particular, there's high acceptance for solar, wind, and hydropower. Furthermore, we find that, as Carolina also suggested, that there's a high willingness to engage in collective actions initiatives like energy communities, but so far there's a limited awareness, and the participation is low at the moment. So we find that around 16% of the citizens are on average aware of collective actions initiatives, in particular energy communities, and the engagement in collective actions initiatives is currently low. So it differs a bit across the surveys, but in the larger surveys it's around 4%. But we find that 30% of citizens would generally consider joining an initiative, and 22% even indicate to start an initiative or take in an active role. So now I come to the motivations of the citizens to engage and the preference how collective actions initiatives should be designed. The two major reasons to engage in collective actions initiatives are environmental benefits and economic benefits. Maybe not so surprising, but we want to highlight that it's both. It's not only the economic benefit, and it's also not only the environmental benefit, it's both. In particular, the reduction of fossil fuel consumption and emissions, and to lower the electricity or energy cost. Further perceived benefits are social aspects like community development and social inclusion, energy independence and energy security, and fairness in energy prices and transition. What are the preferences of the citizens for collective actions initiatives? Transparently organized legal structures, the possibility or option to being an owner or shareholder of the initiative, being involved in democratically decision-making processes, and the option of self-consumption of energy. On this slide, I highlight something that I find very interesting. Is the of the people that are aware of collective action initiatives, over 80% indicate that they think it's important or very important collective action initiatives for the transition to a sustainable energy system. So of the people that know of collective action initiatives, there's a vast majority that think that it's very important or very important for the transition. And this is, that you can see below, across all the countries. It's a very homogeneous result. It's not only in some countries, it's over all the countries. My last slide is about the barriers for not joining or starting a collective actions initiative. And we find three major barriers. The first is a lack of awareness. So 55% of the citizens say that they are not joining in collective action initiatives because they are not aware of some. The second is lack of skills and knowledge, and the third is lack of financial resources. And I think this slide is very promising because it says the top three barriers can be addressed by respective political measures. And I would even argue that they are relatively easy to address. Thank you very much. I hand over to Winston.
Thank you, Mark. Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to be with you and present quite an effort that's been undertaken in these past months, combining all of our combining all of our projects' results, and especially focused on the social benefits of social innovation in the energy sector. I will go very fast through here because this really encompasses most of what we're talking about this morning and what we've heard from our esteemed colleagues that presented this morning about these social benefits. So really the key takeaways, if there's anything you remember, you can forget everything I'm saying right now, but if there's one thing you want to remember, oh, well, it's a little bit off, but basically the whole point, the key points that we really find, of course, there's a lot of social dimensions and social benefits to collective action initiatives, but really what we're seeing here, we want to highlight is the point of looking at it through a energy justice lens, which is what we've been talking about, looking at engaging and creating access for low-income communities, for example, creating more of a gender balance. And that is one issue where we're highlighting here, especially we're looking from the energy injustices. We're looking at also what the inequalities between men and women, especially in participating in the energy transition. And so really creating access and creating possibilities through, as Mark was just mentioning, knowledge making, creating more opportunities for engagement and creating, just enhancing knowledge in that sense. And of course, also a big part is, and please also remember, trust. It's also, trust is a key part in the social benefits that we see. Of course, trust among citizens, but also what we're seeing is trust between communities, citizens, and institutions, banking institutions, policymaking institutions. That trust is key, what we're finding. And of course, just overall, the transition, we're creating, as Alessandro was mentioning, from passive consumers to being active, empowered consumers. And so really just quick, I just want to highlight the gender imbalance. So Julia was mentioning earlier that a lot of our key takeaways here are from analysis in our various survey data. And one of the surveys we came across was the percentage of women in decision-making bodies of collective action initiatives. And as we can see through 6 countries in the EU, most of them are under 50%. 50% of collective action initiatives report that report that women are engaged. But it really doesn't go further than that. So really, there's a lot more opportunities needed to engage the gender balance. And from a professional roles, but even just participating in cooperatives and other energy crowdfunding mechanisms, really just creating that opportunities for creating more gender balance in the energy transition. Energy poverty, trust, like I said, this is really key. And one of our surveys shows that around 50% of the collective action initiatives are actively working on and promoting energy poverty alleviation methods. And of course, this relates to financial constraints. This also relates to renters, people that only are renting their properties. So creating more access and opportunities for people that are that are renting and not homeowners. That is also a huge constraint and also addresses the issues of energy poverty. And also, of course, as we all know, the restrictive regulatory frameworks are also straining the energy poverty issues. And like I mentioned, trust among citizens, not just among citizens themselves, which we're finding collective action initiatives do focus on. They are creating community trust among the neighbors, trust among all stakeholders within their communities. But what's lacking is especially a trust between communities and institutions. And last but not least, creating and building more democratic and empowering processes. Really, this is just focusing on, as Alessandro was mentioning earlier, creating possibilities for citizens to not just be passive consumers, but to be really empowered and to be making decisions and taking ownership of their energy production or purchasing. And improved communication between community and institutions is needed, as I've been stressing over and over again. It's really just, Mark was just mentioning in one of the surveys, it's the lack of knowledge that citizens were mentioning in one of the surveys. It's not just at the citizen level, but it's also at the policy-making level of creating this knowledge. And I think that's why this policy brief is so key, because it also shows it's creating more information, adding to the knowledge commons for also at the policy-making level of the benefits of collective action initiatives to enhance and a key driver for the energy transition. So I'll leave it at that, and I'll pass it along to Regina.
Yeah, thank you very much also from my side. So I'm now happy to present the evaluation, so the impacts on social innovation I was looking at. Can I also have the slides, please? Yeah, so measuring the impact is quite important. And the bad news is that it's quite challenging. Quantifying impacts, because there's such a variety. We've just seen 18 different types of social innovation approaches. How can you compare what a Friday for Future is achieving with an energy cooperative or so? So it's very difficult. Because there is this variety, they also have very different aims. We were looking at these aims, and so looking at how they achieve the aims is something also challenging, and especially challenging is it when we are looking at those initiatives which try to change the opinions or the preferences. How can you measure that? That's very challenging. And because they are changing the way people are thinking, and we can't really look into the brain of the people. And what we also found out is that data is scarce because those social initiatives don't have the capacity. The evaluation, they're very happy to focus on their core business, but then they don't have additional time to really do the impact analysis. And also sometimes when we talk to them, they were also not aware, what will be the benefit for them to actually do an evaluation, because they know what they achieve, but they were not aware, that is worthwhile spending time on. And then also there was not as much awareness of how they could measure their impact. So that's the bad news. But nevertheless, can I go to the next slide? Oh. I have to press myself. We also believe it's very important, because what we found is that when we did impact evaluations with our social initiatives, we found that it's good because they will attract more members. They could develop new financial models. They can improve their environmental impact, and also they will be able to provide more social benefits to their members. So it's worthwhile doing it, although it's very challenging. The good news now is that in our Sonnet projects, we developed a variety of approaches. So we used, and this is now the Commons project, our capacity or their capacity to come up with a very large database. So it's the first inventory where you really have now quantitative data for more the subset of community action-led energy cooperatives. So it's very much a more homogeneous group of initiatives there, but there is now really data which I think is not yet ready. It will be ready by the end of the month. But then, we have a huge data set. You can see it's more than around 9,000 initiatives which they brought together, the information with quantitative indicators, how much members they have, how much renewable capacity they have installed, and so on. So we have now a huge data set to do more evaluation on this specific type of energy initiative. Then in our second approach, that was in the Sonnet project, we used surveys. And surveys, and this is now different to what Mark was presenting, surveys of either SIE representatives, so people within them, not citizens which are outside, although people in the field, and also the researchers looking at those initiatives. And we were asking them about what are the aims of these initiatives and how do you perceive the contribution. And what is interesting is that the dark color, the dark green, are the aims which they mentioned as their core aims as the initiative. And you can see social acceptance, local community, is something which they have mentioned as an aim for them as initiatives, and they are very good performing towards these aims. So towards their own aims, these are the dark colors, the dark green, they are performing much better than to the shared or to the EU aims. That's what we found. And what is really interesting is that what Mark said before, that the financial aspect is so important, when we ask the members, they basically only rank them at the second. So consumer bill comes very low. So it's not really the financial aims which they perceive they can contribute most to. It's more really social acceptance and things which I believe are very important for the energy transition. And so that's something not many other stakeholders can contribute to. So I think it's a very important role for these social initiatives. And then the last approach which was used is the SWOT analysis. This was by the social res. So this is more a kind of a qualitative approach, looking at the strengths and weaknesses of 8 non-representative, they were mainly energy cooperatives. And what you see there is that it's a very diverse picture. So some believe that they are very strong in external communication or internal communications. Others believe they are very weak in this. But what we see here is that when they become aware of it, they can start changing these things. So it's very important for them to do the evaluation because it gives them the chance to understand how they can become better and how they can maybe then also get more members and improve their impact. So that's the good news. There are now approaches available. We have this huge database, and I think now we can also start doing more quantitative evaluation, at least for some of the more homogeneous SIEs. Thank you very much, and I hand over. I think now it's Berlin, or is it? No, it's
yeah, no. Exactly. So now I think we will have a short, but very, very short break because we will have to make the technical switch to connect to Jan Fjørnes in Berlin. So this will take just a few minutes. Maybe I use the opportunity to mention that, we are representing now the policy brief, but it's of course the work of many people, like, basically all members of the 4 consortia. And I also would like to say thank you again for joining us in this effort to bringing all the knowledge together from the research from the last 3 years. 2 minutes, 1 minute until we can connect to Jan. And after we finalize with the presentation, there will be then the discussion with our panelists, where we're very happy that they will react to our joint policy brief and give feedback, let us know what they find useful, and maybe also give inspiration then also for future research projects working on the same field. So I think we're connecting, and
hello.
There he is. Great.
Can people hear me?
Yes.
Yes, okay, that's good. So now I'm just waiting for the slides to be shared to you guys. All right, that looks good. Thank you. So hello everyone, greetings from Berlin. Unfortunately, I cannot be there in presence, but I hope my virtual presence suffices. I'm involved in the Social Res project and contributed to the policy section of the policy brief, which is the section I will talk about. I will briefly give you the context of the policy section, then outline a condensed set of principles of policies we in our research consortia found to be effective in fostering the development of social innovations in the energy transition. And I finish my short presentation with an outlook. Now, let me see if I can steer this. There should be a next slide. No. Now, that is one too far. Now we got it. Okay. We welcome the recent EU's policy shift to a more explicit support and recognition of social innovations in the energy transitions, particularly for energy communities as found in the Clean Energy Package. However, the national implementation of this enabling framework has been slow. One reason for that is the limited awareness of energy and climate policymakers of the potential social innovations have for driving the energy transition forward. Moreover, there's also a limited awareness that the design of policies that are supposed to be supportive for social innovation is important. In light of the Ukraine war, social innovations gain even more importance as they contribute to the energy sovereignty, energy independence, and energy democracy. Generally, now talking about the principles, we found that economic support policies can be good instruments to ensure the financial sustainability of social innovations and decrease the risk of getting involved or invest in social innovations. However, we find that these policies are especially effective when the mechanisms and de-risking effects are simple and easy to understand for the people that are supposed to be affected by them. Feed-in tariffs and premiums are examples of support policies that follow this principle. Policies not following this principle can quickly pose a barrier. Yet, what we see is that policies are often not, or that these policies are often not targeted at social innovations. Feed-in tariffs are, for instance, awarded via competitive auctions. Social innovations often cannot compete with established incumbents as they struggle with burdensome administrative processes and high transaction costs. Correspondingly, we find that being explicitly embedded in legislation enables social innovations to survive as serious actors in the energy system. Legislation on participation and ownership, but also ease of founding socially innovative enterprises, such as renewable energy cooperatives, appears to be crucial. Founding is one thing, operating can still pose a challenge for social innovations in the energy sector due to the unbalanced power structures on the respective markets. In our case studies, we find that social innovations face resistance from incumbent players interested in preserving the status quo. Hence, the social innovators benefit from policies addressing this issue. Also, our research shows the importance of clear roles of different governmental levels. While the EU and national enabling frameworks show to be pivotal in providing orientation for policymakers and funding for social innovations, we find that the direct involvement of local governments, for instance through providing social innovations rooftop areas for PV installation on municipal buildings, or through acting as initiator their own, is a key enabler for social innovation development. Lastly, an overarching principle we identified is the institutional openness towards these social innovations. In our research, we see that social innovations benefit from institutional environments where social innovations are considered in policymaking as policy tools to achieve diverse political goals, and where policymakers consider the multiple benefits social innovations provide, such as increase in social capital, energy literacy, and acceptance of the energy transition. So what is there for the future? Coming back to what Caroline Rogge and my fellow speakers already mentioned earlier, but what cannot be mentioned often enough, we see there's a societal appetite for more participation in the energy transition. The Sonnet project finds, for instance, that while people already have invested in renewable energy cooperatives and green crowdfunding projects in countries like Poland and France, even more people plan to do so in the future. This means it is the policy side's turn to pave the way for enabling the people to realize these plans and to satisfy this appetite. Thank you.
Okay, let me close this presentation, continuing on slide 21 of our presentation. Just wrapping it up quickly with our main conclusions that we drew. So, yeah, you can read all of these conclusions in the policy brief itself, but we all agreed that the social innovation and energy initiatives are very well aligned with the social, economic, environmental, and energy security goals of the European Union, and they offer a potential to support the energy union. However, we also see that the role of social innovation initiatives in current European legislation is still not very large, so we recommend that there should be a much stronger role in the Fit for 55 package that was mentioned by Rosalinda. Because this potential that lies in social innovation and energy can only be tapped if the policies, as Jan just said, pave the way for the people to follow this path. So we need tailor-made policies, also recognizing that we have such a great variety of social innovation in energy. So each type of social innovation needs a particular policy approach. So we need a well-designed policy mix to really enable all different types of social innovation. And in the end, we believe that if we enable these social innovation and energy initiatives, we also unlock a new source of capital, both social capital and economic capital, and that we in the end can also increase the acceptance of citizens of the energy transitions that have to go on in Europe, but also, of course, elsewhere, and that is ever more urgent, as we also said several times already today. There are several policy recommendations in the brief. I just picked 5, which I think are key, and we heard it several times already. We need to raise awareness of the potential of social innovation and energy initiatives, not only among the policymakers, but also among the citizens. So on both sides, there is limited awareness at the moment of this great potential. We should also acknowledge the multiple benefits of social innovation and energy. So it's not only about economic benefits or technical innovation, it's also about these more social values that they create. So social inclusion, energy literacy, they address energy poverty, as we also heard. So we need to be aware of these multiple benefits. And then, as we also said, harness the potential, which we can only do if we have improved legislation, improved policies, where we reduce the barriers for people to get engaged, and on the other hand also open possibilities to get engaged, because some forms of social innovation currently are just not possible under the current legislation. We need to design these policy frameworks in a way that that it is simple and easy to follow for the citizen-led initiatives, that they provide clear guidance for them. So there's also room for improvement there in terms of simplifying legislation. And last but not least, I want to highlight that we should also make an effort, and we do that partly already today, to strengthen the European networks around social innovation and energy, because we observed in our research that many social innovation and energy initiatives, they really could get a lot of support and information and knowledge from these umbrella organizations and networks. So we really think it's key to promote those existing networks and also to create new ones. With this, I thank you very much for your attention. This is the essence of what we worked on in the past 3 years, and I would like to hand over now to Sylvia to guide the policy dialogue.
Thanks a lot, Julia, for this great moderation, the presentation of the policy brief. I will now welcome on the panel discussion our panelists. In the meantime, we propose to have a 1 minute break just to fresh the air, let's say, of the room here, and then to connect to the 2 panelists that are online. And so we can check if we have also the 2 panelists online. And in the meantime, please, I invite you, our panelists to welcome on the stage for the panel discussion. I will wait until I see the 2 panelists that are online. Yes, feel free. You are. I will sit here. Should we bring the? So let's see if we have our panelists online. In the meantime, yes, we can fresh the air here in Brussels. Yeah. I'm waiting for the connection of Sascha and Gabizon and Laurent Bontoux, that they should be able to join online. Yes. Okay, Sascha is here. Hello, Sascha, and also Laurent. Okay, great. was working. I'm very happy for this. So what we have done with our panelists, we sent them, let's say, 1 week ago, this policy brief. And we have asked them today to come on the stage with a speech, let's say, about their feedback on the policy brief. And so in the first part of the panel discussion, we will have 5 speeches, let's say, one for each panelist. And then we can really enter in the panel discussions with some questions from the audience. I will now introduce, let's say, with their biographical note, the panelists. I will follow, let's say, the section that we have in the policy brief, because each of them, they have been asked to address one specific section. So Charlotte, section 1, Dirk, section 2, Sascha, section 3, Laurent, section 4, and then Cristiana, section 5. So I will now introduce Charlotte Koot, and then I will give you, Charlotte, the time for your speech. Please feel free, you can stay there or come here, as you prefer. So Charlotte is an expert in the field of the public engagement in the energy transitions. Currently, she's seconded to the European Commission from the Dutch Ministry of Economic Affairs and the Climate Policies. Charlotte has previously worked as consultant for citizens and stakeholders engagement in the energy sector, and holds a PhD on social psychology. We have seen how much important is psychology today. It's not only about technologies, on public perception and carbon capture storage. So Charlotte, the floor is yours. Yes,
I'll just go there.
Yeah, just feel free.
All right. Thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to say that I'm really honored to be able to be allowed to speak today in this panel discussion on a topic that, as by the introduction shows, is very close to my heart. So I speak about this from 2 perspectives, from my perspective at the DG CLIMA right now, but also from my policy experience back in the Netherlands. Also try to keep it brief, because I think we don't have that much time. And I'll go into my reflections about the chapter on diversity and relevance of social innovation in energy. I'll touch on 3 issues, or 3 topics, basically. First, the point of bringing back people to the center of the energy transition. Now, I sometimes like to say, I don't think we would be changing our entire energy supply if people weren't using it. So, in a sense, the energy transition is people-centered. We just sometimes tend to forget that in the midst of discussions about technologies and markets and et cetera. But we will have to come back to this. And we do see this in many examples that are mentioned today already, in the European Green Deal that puts people first, in the Climate Pact, the establishment of the Just Transition Fund, etc. The next step is just, how do we do this? How do we exactly put people at the center? And I do really welcome this research on social innovations, because I believe it really helps us to put people in the center. And one point in particular is also to get an idea, or the work on measuring and evaluating the effects of social innovation. I find very valuable, because it really helps us to demonstrate the importance and but also to implement these social innovations, to see where they can work and how. One next question I would really like to discuss, if we have time, is how to indeed merge, and I think someone's alluded to this already, maybe Rosalinda and Julia, I think as well, how to really sort of make technical and social innovations partners rather than an add-on or something that has a fence built around it, but how do they become partners in research, in policy, etc. Because one cannot live without the other one. So that's one topic I'd really like to touch on. The other aspect is we have different issues and we need different innovations to tackle these issues. And in that sense, I really welcome the work that helps differentiate between different types of social innovations, because I do feel that oftentimes when it comes to issues that involve people, or the soft work as it sometimes is seen, any sort of social innovation is seen as effective or interesting. And I think we can all agree that that is not how it works. So that's a very interesting aspect I find of the recommendations today. And I really welcome the typologies that have been discussed as well. So I do think there's really a need to better understand the effects and the different issues that we can tackle with social innovations and with which innovations. Particularly, we've talked about inclusivity of the energy transition. I think generational inclusivity is very interesting. So I'd like to go into that as well. Thirdly, my next page, is the aspect of the energy cooperatives diversifying the playing field. I know this discussion quite well from my background in the Netherlands, is that when cooperatives come into play, they are really a new player in town. They are a new character on the stage, and you really have to find out what role they will play, because we didn't have this role in the play yet before. So, of course, we see that regulations, etc., don't always fit this new game, and I think it's really important to have a conversation on how do we deal with this transition. We will sometimes have regulatory gaps. We sometimes will have new regulations, such as in the Renewable Energies Directive, that aim to help these social innovations. Does it actually work? And I think in order to find this out, we really need to share lessons of success, good practices, and we need a few key people in this dialogue. So not only the social innovations, we also need different levels of government that manage or do not manage to work with these social innovations or cooperatives. And lastly, also the businesses that manage to collaborate really well with social innovations, because I think they are the best to explain why they may be protecting the status quo, as it has been described. What are they holding on to? What is so important for them that hampers them to collaborate with these cooperatives? And I think a forum like today is a really excellent chance to do this. So I look forward to discussing that with you.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Charlotte.
Thanks a lot. I'm happy now to introduce you Dirk Vansintjan. He's the co-founder and president of REScoop.eu. So Dirk is the president of the European Federation of Citizens Energy Cooperatives, REScoop.eu. He's also a co-founder of a citizen energy cooperative, EcoPower, that has 64,000 members and supplies 1.6% of the households in the Belgian Flanders with green electricity. As a student, Dirk was very active with the anti-nuclear ecological movement, peace movement in Flanders in Belgium. He was involved in founding the Green Parties in Flanders and has been a member of the Council of a Municipality, Rotterdam, for 12 years. He's a co-founder. I have really reduced his biographical notes. He's co-founders of several projects in the renewable energy sector. In 1991, he co-founded the citizen energy cooperative, EcoPower, co-founded the REScoop Belgium, who was the vice president. Then he's now the president of REScoop.eu, as I said before, the Federation of Citizen Energy Cooperative in Europe. So, Dirk, you are one of the best representatives, I will say, of social innovation here today. So I give you the floor for your speech. Thanks for being with us today.
So it will be very hard to stick to the topic citizen perception and support of the I will start with we started with the speech of the Vice Mayor of Antwerp, and when I go back in time in my memory, so EcoPower, my cooperative, seems a success story, but one of our biggest disappointments way back in time was with the city of Antwerp. Probably the Vice Mayor, he was not there yet, so he's not to blame. But a year, well, let's say 2005, we were chosen by the city of Ghent and the port of Ghent to build some wind turbines in an industrial zone that was being developed. And so we share the project 80%. Now it's EDF, so a big company, and we 20%. And we thought that this would be followed by the other ports in Belgium, and indeed, the Port of Antwerp inquired whether we could advise them how to set up a sort of tender, and then they chose a private person to do the project. Someone they knew very well. We didn't know anything about him, and now it went into another company, and then now I think it's in hands of Mitsubishi now, if I'm not mistaken. So my own cooperative, we now supply almost 1.7% now of the Flemish households, and we have the lowest price. I won't say cheap, it's not cheap. We have the lowest price of all suppliers, and there were some bankruptcies due to the crisis we now have. The prices of gas and electricity went sky high, and in 1 week we had 5,000 new members, bringing in 4 million euro of equity. So we had to stop the people coming in, because in order to have our low price, we have to have a balance between production and supply to our members. And if we don't have sun and wind, like last year, we had to buy a lot on the market at a very high price sometimes. So we have to keep a balance. But suppose the Port of Antwerp would have chosen us and not this private person they knew very well, we might be able to, and other examples like this, I can give you plenty, we might be able to not to supply to 2% of the Belgian Flemish households, but maybe 20%. So we've come a long way from being a strange actor, and now we are present on the European level. I didn't hear much about the Clean Energy for All Europeans package, which was crucial for us. We got definition from the European Commission. We were very happy that we have these definitions of energy communities. It is about us. It's not something new. I saw it here and there in your text. It's not something new. We've been around since the very electrification of Europe. In Germany, there were 6,000 electricity cooperatives in between the First and the Second World War. Only 40 of them survived Nazism, communism, and neoliberalism, let's say. So we've been around all the time, but now we are recognized as a separate actor. We're part of the social economy. That's another part of the European Commission. So they recognize all cooperatives, not only energy cooperatives, as part of the social economy. So that's also crucial. So we think we are a different actor, and now all member states have to transpose the Clean Energy Package directives. They have to make enabling frameworks, but not many have done so far, not even in my own region, Flanders. Yesterday I still had a meeting with our regulator. They will be working on it. So what is also crucial is that the European Commission, on demand of the European Parliament, they now have installed two, let's say, secretariats or support organizations. It's the Energy Communities Repository, and my federation, REScoop.eu, is the leading partner, apart from the Florence School of Regulation, FEDEREN, and Energy Cities. So our aim is also to make an inventory of all. So we will have a meeting with you so that the results of your projects, that the data that you gathered will come to us as well, to the repository, let's say. And also we have to give technical assistance in countries where energy communities are not present, like, let's say, the former communist countries and the Balkan, Portugal, for instance, as well. So that's one, and then there's the Rural Energy Communities Advisory Hub, it's a long name, which will more focus on the rural areas. So these are two tools that the European Commission installed now. They become active now, and will help spread the energy communities across the whole of the European Union. Indeed, citizens are interested. So in my own cooperative, we never asked for money. We don't have bank loans. So the Belgian citizens, they are willing to invest. We now also are, together with all the cooperatives, we joined a consortium, a cooperative of cooperatives, and we will try to get a stake in the new offshore wind farms. Because Belgium is so densely populated, mainly Flanders, that it's hard to install wind turbines. We have airports, we have people everywhere, NATO pipelines, which might be important nowadays, and all kinds of things that are obstacles. So we want to also take a stake in the offshore wind farm, because ownership is crucial. If you want us to fight energy poverty, if you want us to supply electricity at cost to the citizens, we must have wind turbines. So ownership is crucial for the energy transition to succeed, and for us it should lead to energy democracy. I'll stop here.
Now we should have online Sascha Gabizon. Let's see if we are able to see her. I wait a bit for our Perfect. Hello, Sascha. Thanks. Thanks a lot for being with us. I will introduce you, and then I give you the floor, as I have done with the other panelists. So after spending several years in West Africa, Sascha has developed the organization Women Engaged for a Common Future, WECF, which resulted from a sustainable development process of the United Nations, where 9 major groups, including civic society, women's organizations, are encouraged to engage global environmental policy process. Sascha has been engaged in the global process at the United Nations Environmental since more than 15 years and has worked numerous programs and studies, including gender, energy justice, energy transitions in Europe and Africa. Now her organization, so the Women Engaged for a Common Future, is a network of women and environmental organizations working in over 50 countries. So we are really happy to have Sascha with us today. I give you the floor, Sascha, for your speech.
Yes, thank you so much. And it's a great pleasure. I hope you can hear me well.
Yes.
I was trying to get to Brussels from our office in Germany, in Munich, and then we had a big problem between Aschaffenburg and Würzburg, or Würzburg and Aschaffenburg, and we got stuck, and I could not make it to Brussels. So I'm back at home, but I'm really pleased because we have been able to follow everything very, very well. And just to say that our project, that our organization also has Horizon 2020 and other research projects similar to yours. And so I'm here also to share a bit from our work and looking specifically at your chapter on gender equality, social inclusion, energy poverty. And you asked me the question of, why do we need gender equality and social inclusion at the heart of the energy transition? And I think your report already gave us quite a few answers. First of all, of course, that the energy sector is quite male dominated, both in employees, but also at the decision-making level. We just do not have enough women in the boards and in power positions. And in your report, you present indeed also some statistics on the that less than 50% of the collective action initiatives have women engaged, and when they are engaged, they are also really a minority. And we also have statistics indeed that in overall in Europe, where the energy sector employs relatively few women, some 20% of the workforce. It depends, of course, in some countries more than in others, and also quite few women as CEOs of energy companies or infrastructure companies. But at the same time, as you also show in the report, there's a huge potential. We have a lot of young women really engaged, the Gretas of our time, who are highly motivated. And so you mentioned this 90% of potential, which we currently are not making use of. So I think a large part of that also has to do with trying to bring in more gender equality. And some of the reasons are, first of all, that we still have a gender pay gap and a pension pay gap, and that women just have less resources to invest in energy cooperatives, in their homes, to become more energy efficient, etc. So that's one reason why. And of course, we also have the fact that women still do most of the reproductive care work, and a lot of that care work is also done at home. And if you have different energy tariffs for companies or for homes, then you already create inequalities there as well. We also, in one of our studies, have been looking at energy poverty in our Horizon project. And we see that energy poverty affects women more than men. And we also see that we need to do much more to make sure that our policies, Fit for 55, European Green Deal, that these policies do not worsen existing inequalities. Already women are the majority of people living in poverty in the EU, and they will also be hardest hit, or are hardest hit by the increasing energy prices, and they are least able to take loans and to invest. But we don't have a lot of precise data. For example, we got some data from the city of Barcelona, which studied energy poverty and disconnection of households, and they found that 67% of those affected were women-headed households. single mothers, but also older women living on very small pensions. So we need different approaches. And if we don't take a more gender responsive approach, we will further reinforce inequalities for decades, because a lot of the infrastructure we're now going to put in place, the more energy efficient, renewable energy infrastructure, will be there for decades. And we don't want to build more inequalities into our systems. So how do we do that? I mean, we heard a lot from your report already, which is really important. So for us, the prosumer model is essential. Yeah. And so revising the approach of how to make consumers key actors of this energy transition within the Renewable Energy Directive, the RED II, is key, but we need more gender responsive prosumer models so that we really push for women to equally participate and benefit from these decentralized concepts. We also need, from energy poverty point of view, a better definition so that it really integrates the gender dimensions of energy poverty. And we need measures to address energy poverty, which also address the root causes of these inequalities. And they will be linked to other policies like housing policies. And therefore, we need to look at the EU renovation wave. We know that of course, there will be, some 160,000 additional green jobs created in the 35 million buildings which are going to be renovated. But how many of these jobs will also be jobs for women and young women in particular? So we need to look at that renovation and make sure that it also does not lead to an increase in renting prices for then those low-income families, which are in majority also women families. So there's a lot of things to take into account when we look at the renovation wave. Already, I mean, I was just listening to the news in France a few days ago, and they're talking that many of the low-income apartments are now being sold because the new law said that you can no longer rent apartment when it is not, when it has the lowest energy efficiency score, score G. And these are particularly, of course, the apartments which are being used and rented by the lowest income tenants who themselves do not have the money to buy and renovate their own flats. So here we also really need to look at the housing policies, and then we come to the municipal level, of course, and we might need to really make a big investment support for municipalities to buy these flats, which are now getting onto the market because no one wants to renovate them, but we still need them because we need them for social housing. So I think there's a lot of coherency which is needed between the different policies of the EU. And you can stop me when I need to stop. I'm just continuing with many ideas, and we can also take some of these points later, of course. But we need more coherency, and we need more coherency to promote more mandatory social inclusion and mandatory gender equality conditionalities for the structural and cohesion funds, for the European Green Deal and for the Fit for 55 package. And all these policies should also be coherent with what we already have as the Commission's gender equality strategy, or the EU's anti-racism action plan, or the disability strategy. So we really need to create that coherence across all these very important policies of the EU. Perfect. And we need to link it, of course, also to the public transport policies. Yeah, we have the smart and sustainable mobility strategy, and we, but we see that there is a focus on electric cars, but this is also increasing inequalities because, women have less access to cars,
Thanks
especially from low-income communities.
I hope you can hear me. Thanks a lot. Okay, yeah. You can hear me. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for being able to be with us. I know that it was challenging your travel yesterday, so thanks for being with us anyhow. So now we have another panelist that is online, Laurent Bontoux. Let's see if Laurent is able to see me. Okay, perfect. Thanks, Laurent.
Yes, thank you.
So I will also introduce you, as I've done with the other panelists. Laurent is a senior forest science expert in the EU Joint Research Centre, JRC, Competence Center for Forest Science. He has been a member of the cabinet of the European Vice President Sefcovic, in charge of forest science for policy. Laurent daily work activities involve bringing future-oriented systemic thinking into EU policy making, using the participation technique with the key stakeholders. And then he's really involved in several activities focusing on health, environmental risk assessment. So Laurent, I have a short also your biographical note that was very long. We are very happy to have you here. I leave you now for your speech, and then we close these overview speeches with Cristiana Marchitelli. So Laurent, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much for inviting me here today for this very interesting conference where I have learned a lot. So I will be very brief. We have very little time left. The question raised by section 4 of the policy brief was, what impact does social innovation in energy have on energy transitions? So we're now in a situation in which climate change is forcing us to get out of the use of fossil fuels very quickly. This has turned out to be quite difficult, and so a lot of people agree that this was too slow. And now we have the war in Ukraine, which is actually a game changer and starting to push the situation very fast in terms of how can we get out of Russian fossil fuels, at least as fast as we can. And so the data provided by these projects on all these energy communities, which are emerging here and there, were generated before, this game changer. And we can see that they have a lot of diversity, but they still only supply a small fraction of the energy supply that society needs. So we have to actually, stimulate this to happen more. And we need to reflect on how we want our future energy system to look like, and to make sure that this transition reaches the whole of society and not just these socially innovative communities. So I've seen that the data that the projects have generated show that these SIEs tend to engage in energy projects mostly for self-motivating reasons, and so we have to, when I heard the presentations, earlier today, I've heard that there's a large future potential for social innovation in energy transition. There's a strong citizen support for different types of formula to do this. There's a need for a long-term perspective, something that Professor Whitmire told us, and that we need radical ideas. And so what I'm saying is that it would be very interesting to actually help the social innovation by using foresight techniques, because when you engage in foresight, you engage in helping people understanding systems, and you stimulate imagination, and you also generate collective intelligence and mutual learning from these very broadly participatory and inclusive techniques. And I think that this is really something which is very needed to foster the development of a diversity of types of energy communities, which would be best adapted to very specific local circumstances. And we've heard from Antwerp and we've heard from Slovenia, that situations there are quite diverse, that psychology plays a very important role, but also that technologies and their limitations absolutely need to be taken into account to find the right formulas to move forward. And so in order to be able to connect the dots, bring knowledge together, I think that foresight and its capacity to connect qualitative narratives together with quantitative data would be extremely useful to help this discussion move forward and find different types of application. And developing scenarios for the future can also have another benefit, which I've heard mentioned in previous interventions, which is that of helping the understanding of policy coherence. This is not just about energy policies or how to implement the best energy technology. You have to have an understanding where the transition is complex and different policy domains have to work together to make a success of it. We have to have the social dimension together with the technological dimension, the economic dimension, and so forth, which have to work together, as well as the economic incentives to make sure that all of these transitions, which are going to be diverse, contribute at the local level to the overall energy transition, which is desired by the European level with the Fit for 55 policy packages. So I'm going to close my intervention now because I see that time is running out. Thank you very much again for inviting me, and if there's time, I can always answer some questions. Thank you very much.
Thanks to you, Laurent, for being with us today. Thanks a lot. And now I'm happy to welcome to the stage Cristiana Marchitelli for the section 5 of the policy brief. Cristiana studied international politics and market at the University of Bologna and Sciences Po Paris, and majored in politics and economics of international energy at Johns Hopkins University. While in Italy, she was also part of the Italian climate network. Since 6 years, she's in Brussels, where she is currently policy officer at the European Commission, working on research, innovation, digitalization, and competitiveness for the DG Energy. Her main focus are upcoming digitalization for the Energy Action Plan in Europe. He has been also co-founder of the European Young Network, how to evolve young population, evaluate then, let's say, in the energy, and then to share and elevate their ideas. So very, very nice initiative, Cristiana. So I give you now the floor for your speech. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So I will be very brief due to time constraints, but for reacting to the chapter number 5 of the recommendation on policies, I will react to 3 main points. The first one on the limited awareness of policymakers, both in energy and climate policymakers, and the institutional openness. I see occasions like this one on only talking about energy, social innovation in energy, very important because mentioning it rather than just mention specific type of social innovation in energy gives us the broader perspective of what social innovation can do in the different domains and the different policies and all the different typologies that can take place. And also talking about it can help novel forms of social innovation even emerge. As Manuela presented at the beginning, social innovation has been progressively integrated into the programming side. So since 2014, we have it. And Rosalinda has mentioned it in Horizon 2020 and Horizon Europe. We're trying to mainstream social sciences and humanities and social innovation in the calls. So in terms of our perspective, policy from the Commission side, we are understanding what is the role of social innovation in the programming, and we're trying to mainstream it also. DG Research has created a social innovation matrix among the colleagues of the different DGs, so there is this network of colleagues who can think of how to further progress social innovation in the different policies, not only in energy. Also, one point that was very interesting to see what Regina mentioned about the difficulty of measuring and evaluating social innovation. There, I would like to really call for more research to understand what are the different indicators so that policymakers can understand the impact. So if you really want this institutional openness and awareness of policymakers, perhaps have a better monitoring system to tap into the, for example, the data that Regina presented or the mapping of the social innovation in energy community that REScoop has done can be a starting point. So more research in monitoring can be interesting so that we can actually do the feedback to policy exercise that is really dear to us. So we draw from the deliverables from the projects and we do policy making upon them. My second point, I really wanted to react on the building on the consumer's appetite, on the citizens' appetite to do more, to engage more. But I wanted to mention the newest initiative that the Commission launched, but Dirk has already mentioned the Energy Community Repository that we launched last week. But I really wanted to highlight how important it is to have a facility that helps the regulators and the communities to understand what are the processes to support the already existing communities, but also to how to set up new business models. And of course, also in the framework of the digitalization of energy action plan, it is really important that communities have this one-stop shop to go to. We have new funding to set up. The Commission as a will provide also funding to support the communities and a facility to have projects supporting from the get-go. But really, we saw from the presentations that there are certain social innovation mechanisms. I found out myself that one of the technologies that we thought was important, like for the community exchange and electricity exchange, so the peer-to-peer exchange was among one of the 18th typology of social innovation. So again, fora like this are important so that we are all aware of what we're doing. Just to end, the third point I wanted to react upon was the pivotal role of the local governments in having social innovation, in acting as an intermediary of the impact that social innovation can actually have in the local communities. And multi-governance structures are also important because citizens and communities need to have the opportunity to participate. And for example, one initiative that I can also mention is the Citizens Energy Forum that we organize each year. This can be already one initiative ongoing that can that can represent a forum where the different initiatives come together to drive the social innovation further. Thank you.
Thanks, Cristiana. Okay, thanks a lot to all the panelists for these great speeches. I would like to know if there are maybe any questions from the audience here from Brussels. Please, you can come here at the stage and take advantage of our panelists. Or either if there are any questions for the platform.
Yes, there's one question from the platform.
Okay. So you can come here if you wanted, just to, so they can, come here.
Mic over there? There's a mic over here.
Yes, there is also a microphone. Okay, either you come here.
We are.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
Just in case.
Yes, thanks.
So we have one question from Antwerp. So interesting and encouraging to see support amongst the citizens for renewable energy developments. Is there research into how this changes depending on the proximity of the development? For example, the NIMBYism issue. So that's one question from online. So the issue of NIMBYism, does that come up?
Okay, so I will first go with our panelists, whom would like to address this question. Yep. Yes, we needed a microphone because.
I know we have.
Yes. Yes, I forgot to give the microphone.
Yeah, from my experience with concrete projects, our first wind project was initiated by a city, the city of Eeklo, and they were looking for a partner, a developer, to install 2 and later 3 wind turbines. But they, preceding of their tender, they took along as much citizens as possible. They went with a bus to a wind farm in the Netherlands, so that people could hear it, could touch it. So they did a very good analysis of their territory, and when they were looking for a partner, for them it was important. I'm talking about 1999. So they had a plan for their whole territory, a sustainable energy action plan, let's say, avant la lettre. And they so when they were looking for a partner for them, one of the main issues in the tender or criteria was to what extent can citizens and SMEs participate? And we answered, we were 30 people and 2 million Belgian francs, 50,000 euros in our pockets. We answered they can participate for 100%. So we won the tender, and there was not one person objecting to the wind turbines. Since then, there have been 25 wind turbines installed in the municipality. Unfortunately, only 5 of cooperatives, of our cooperative. But there was not one person objecting to these 25 wind turbines. So it's very important, and that's the good advice we give to municipalities. If you want wind turbines on your territory, start with a white piece of paper. Don't go with a plan that was made by engineers. The result will probably be the same, but the process you're going with your citizens, that's crucial. So that's what I think about NIMBYism. Sometimes we are thrown into a project where engineers made the plan, and then of course you have people who are against it, and then you can turn this because it's a minority that is very vocal. Mm-hmm. So then you have to mobilize the people who are in favor. And for my cooperative in Flanders, because we're a supplier in the whole of Flanders, that's easy. We have hundreds of members in every municipality. So we mobilize our people, and against the black flags, there are green flags. But then you have to convince people. It turns out that the group who is against, they have different reasons, and so you have to answer to their anxiety. It's anxiety they have. They are afraid of what's coming. It's new. It's strange. They didn't have good information beforehand. Mm-hmm. So it's important to start engaging people from the very beginning, from the white piece of paper. Yeah.
May I just build up on that?
Yes. Yes, please.
I mean, this makes me think that actually we are moving from a political of acceptance of a technology, so really a top-down approach, to the co-creation of it. That's why social innovation has proven really important in this case. So co-creating together with the citizens is very important to hear all the different opinions and all the different segments of the population that can be affected by very different, because I mean, the problem is multifaceted as always. So having this co-creation process is really important in this sense. And social innovation is the instrument and the umbrella under which we can do that.
Yes. If I may add to that, I really agree that the process is extremely important and that it's essential to include local communities from the beginning. I do think data on this would really help because there's major concerns, of course, but the speed of these processes, how long do they take? And I think we have a hunch that it might actually speed up the entire process. But if we could prove that, that would really help because, of course, right now, with the increased need for the deployment of renewables, there's also a sense of urgency. So I think that's also sort of a concern that needs to be addressed. I do know, to answer the question very directly, but not completely, of a research project in the University of Nijmegen in the Netherlands that has used modeling to project the length of permitting procedures over entire procedures of renewables and to see when local cooperatives were included or not, whether that would change the timeline. There are indications that it does, so that's sort of the scientific answer. I cannot name the researchers, I'm very sorry if they're watching. But so there is some research on this that I know of. There must be more.
Thanks a lot for the intervention. We have another question I see from the audience.
Hi, is a quick question for Dirk. You mentioned that you got many new members after the energy price crisis started to hit. Is that mainly because you are able to supply lower prices or for other reasons? And if it's for the first ones because you're able to supply lower prices, is your model the fact that, as you mentioned, ownership is important and allows you to provide electricity at production costs the main reason why you have lower prices, or is also the fact that you use only renewables as a generation source? Or a mix of that? Thank you.
Well, the fact that we have a low price is because we don't have to make profit. So So it's our business model as a cooperative. Our aim is that as much people in Flanders get green electricity from Belgium, because we also have installations in Wallonia, and I hope soon in Belgium, which is offshore. So our aim is that that we can provide them with green electricity from their own country at the lowest possible price. That's the goal of our cooperative. And so this is, of course, in times of crisis, and especially because we have a sort of balance between production and consumption and supply, that is crucial. So we are less dependent on the volatile prices on the market. And if I can add something, a lot of people don't know that in Belgium only 25% of the electricity is consumed by the households and other low voltage consumers, but they carry the load of the support for renewables. They carry 80 to 90%, and I can't find who has decided this and where does it come from. And we see if we go to we think that about 50% of the electricity will be produced decentralized by citizens, by municipalities on their roofs, by cooperatives. That means that 50%, most of this electricity, at least 25%, goes to the industry, and now they only contribute to the high voltage lines, not to the mid voltage, not to the low voltage. So we have to find a new balance. They won't like me saying this, but that's we only have households and small businesses. So.
And you got more small businesses joining recently? Sorry.
I can't tell. I can't tell. There are more. No, I don't know. No. Yeah.
Okay. Any
We
comments?
have another question from our online guests. This is from Ali. So one of the main motives for citizens to participate in community energy rather than individual solutions is energy justice, equality, democratization, all these aspects we're talking about today. Does this present a clash of interest with central governments? To what level do they want to protect status quo and the benefits of large energy companies? Thanks, Ali. And of course, our panelists online, feel free to chime in too.
Yes. Yes, we have forgotten. Yes, I don't know if who would like to other.
I can answer this question too, if you want.
Yes.
So when I look, I will focus now on the situation I know best in Flanders. To my so we have the problem that the distribution system operator, we only have one operational company now. It's 100% owned by the municipalities, and whatever they do, perhaps this is an exaggeration, but whatever they do, they can have 5% of dividend on what they do. So if there is a problem, they add a cable, and they can take profit. It's not completely like this, but that's how it is. So the municipalities are a quite conservative factor in the energy transition. So, and the mayors, they often are also in the Flemish Parliament. So the change will be difficult in Flanders. So they have to make an enabling framework now, but I don't see it coming. So I can show you letters of our Minister of Energy that says, well, if the projects would be more in hands of cooperatives, it would take longer. So they think it will go faster when they rely on the big incumbents and the new developers, often foreign developers, whereas we think it will go faster. So, but indeed we have to be able to convince them. So the national government in Belgium is rather favorable of energy communities, and in Wallonia as well, and Brussels as well. So it depends on political choices in different countries, different regions. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Hi, Andrei Gubina from University of Ljubljana and IRI University of Ljubljana from Slovenia. I would like to touch to the comment that Dirk said about the engineers, because I'm an electrical engineer. So we've had this discussion in the past in one workshop when there were engineers and economists and sociologists, as we call them, and the engineer said, great, you're here, tell us what do people want, because we want to design the solutions for them. And they said, we can't, because we don't know, because the people don't know. You need to design it for them and present as a menu, and then people will pick what they like and what they don't. And here, this is this anecdote, my personal anecdote, shows the importance of the people-centered development and the solutions that these 4 projects are showing here. I'm really excited to be here and to hear more what engineers need to do to help all these innovations and transitions to go forward. Thank you.
Thanks. Yes, was I don't know if we want to comment or.
Well, a good advice to starting energy communities is don't start only with engineers, because they will often be pensioned, gray-haired men. So I have to agree. So the more you bring in the social aspect, the more younger and especially women will turn up as well. So if you start an energy community, see that there are other things than talks about technical or financial things. That is more about community building, about engaging the community, about what you can do with the profits for the community, not only energy-related things, but and then that's our experience. Then younger people and women will turn up. Yeah.
I think that also touches upon the research, the work that was done on which values social innovations can contribute to. If you can explain this and not only explain it in a framework of an energy transition or an energy system or your bill or whatever, but you can also explain these other values, you'll also get other people involved. Also within governments, I think it's really interesting if you can get people outside of the energy unit or department involved, because as we discussed, the motivations for people to participate and the results that these innovations can yield touch upon many more, well, also policy goals than just greening our energy system. So I think also in terms of sort of advertisement, indeed, as Dirk says, if you want to put it that way, it's really essential.
If you don't do it, there are 3 energy cooperatives that only allow women members. Oh. So that happens, so that they say, well, otherwise, when the men come in, these engineers, then we go out. So yeah, it's a pity, but that's reality.
Okay, it's good information for Sascha that is online.
Actually, Sascha does have a question later, but I'll first ask a question regarding. This is a question for DG ENER and CLIMA. How is social innovation supported through the Fit for 55 package, and in particular, how is it considered in the proposed social climate fund?
We need an agreement here.
Well, you may start. Like I explained, I'm fairly new at DG CLIMA, so I will have limited comments.
Well, this is a very, very interesting question. I mean, I personally do not work in the Social Climate Fund, and I'm not in the position to reply to this question at the moment. So I know that from the communication we have seen that social innovation is not explicitly mentioned in the Fit for 55 measures. But even though it is not referred as the concept, it has been indirectly touched upon. So we tried to have, through the different measures that we have in the package, to tackle some issues, like, for example, in the missions, we have the new European Bauhaus, which has a strong multi-stakeholder social innovation dimension to link with the newly adopted measures for the EPBD. we take these we take these issues into account, especially because as far as the EPBD and the building stock is concerned, there are all these issues concerning energy poverty, the changing concept of vulnerability of consumers, also with the transition that is twin, so green and digital transition. We don't know how the digitalization of the energy sector can actually change the concept of vulnerable consumers. These are all taken into account in the Fit for 55 package, although social innovation is not specifically mentioned. So these are, I can name one of the areas where we have inserted social innovation in the Fit for 55.
Perfect. Thanks a lot. I don't know if you want to add anything, Charlotte, or is
just in general, it's not an answer, but it's rather a comment. I think this demonstrates the point that I was trying to make earlier, is that I think the relevance of putting people first, the awareness is quite high. It's just we're really at this step now of how do you implement this in a sort of well-considered way, rather than trying to enter it everywhere. So you do see these elements popping up like you just described. But I think it's really a next challenge to do this way more strategically, knowing which challenge to tackle with which innovation or what innovation is needed. So this just, I think that's the point we're at.
Yeah, but now, I mean, if I can just comment, now the momentum is, I mean, we have to size the chance, because unfortunately we live in this situation where we were forced to take action, and with the REPowerEU there is this strong accent to the penetration of renewables, and so the decentralization of the energy creates the opportunity for citizens to become more active, so prosumers and energy communities to have a role. So although we live in this unfortunate situation, it helped raising awareness. So citizens are not only willing but also now aware of the situation, and it is important that now we build on this momentum so that we create the enabling framework for all of this to happen.
Yes. Thanks a lot. We need now to close this panel discussion, because it's really, I don't want to take too much advantage of your time. You were very kind of being with us today. I will simply wrap up with a few words and saying that we, as an energy policy expert, we should really take advantage of all the knowledge that we have in social innovation, crowdfunding, energy community aggregation, to give also the example. For instance, I can talk personally, in the house of my parents in Italy, now the energy is supplied by an energy cooperative, member of REScoop. So I really try, since I'm a coordinator of social res, really to use the knowledge that I had in these 3 years of the project to also make my step for the sustainable development. And so I really think that all of you today has seen a lot about social innovation. And then I will recommend all of us, specifically today, more than ever, with this global warming, with the war in Ukraine, to take action. So this is my recommendation for today, to give first the example, and then a lot of people I see that are following me when I say that I member the energy supply now in this house in Italy is from renewable energies. They were very curious because they have seen, of course, the news and the television for the war. And we are trying to see how to do with the gas now to have a sustainable supply. But yes, I would like, we have a lot of words here, but we have to proceed with the conference. I would like to thank you, the panelists, for your time, all the speakers of today. I welcome you to stay connected for the ones online, because the conference is going this afternoon and tomorrow. And then we go for the real lunch break, the first one after here in Brussels. Thanks again, and then we'll see you online. Thanks a lot. And we can close this.
Thank you.